Welcome to Permission to Evolve. I'm your host, Brandon Thielk. I'm a performance and life coach.
I'm Holly Deschenes. I'm Brandon's co-host and producer for this podcast.
Yeah, so today we're going to be getting into this idea of permission to own what you feel. And we talk a lot about feelings here, and for good reason. It's uncomfortable. We don't like to feel certain things. We like to push them away, push them to the side. Or there's, even instances where we might be ashamed of what we feel. We're just going to kind of go into why that's important to actually like own your feelings, go through them. And it is under this lens of understanding them and understanding yourself at a deeper level. And dipping into something like hatred or something like that, that's like something we generally feel ashamed of, that we don't want to go there. But there's an importance to that of going to the depths of that feeling to really discover what's at the bottom of it. And so there's a lot of wisdom that can come from this stuff. And it's emotions move. We don't stay in them unless we make judgments about them and hammer them into our nervous system. So these intense sensations and feelings can be temporary unless we really hold on to them. Part of processing and moving through them, we generally don't want to stay in a place of, something like hatred or whatever, but it's taking it the full range so that we can understand like where that's coming from, because unfelt emotions, they spill out in other ways. Yeah, we're just going to explore this topic. So personally, I have a lot of travel coming up. I am going to the Ironman race in Boise, Idaho this weekend. So excited for that, to support some clients. Then I'll be off to LA and then off to Florida. So a lot coming up. Holly just got back from Lake Placid. So there was a race out there. Unfortunately, her husband couldn't race. She'll get into that. But so why don't you share about your trip, Holly?
Sure. So last episode, for anybody who listened to that one, would have heard about how Aaron broke his collarbone while we were in Colorado. And that trip happened 2 weeks ahead of Lake Placid. He ended up having surgery to repair the collarbone, but there's not enough time to heal that in a way that would be safe for him to have raced Lake Placid. We decided to go stay or like keep the trip and go out to Lake Placid. There are a couple of friends were also racing. So decided to go out to support them. Aaron, it was important to Aaron. One of them is a super close friend of his, and it was important to him to be there for him. So we drove out there. It's about a 15, 16-hour drive from where we are in the Midwest to Lake Placid, New York. It's way the heck up there. I didn't realize exactly how far upstate it was until we were driving, and I was like, oh shoot, we're almost in Vermont. Like literally like watching the little map, it's up there. Super pretty. The 1980 Olympics was there, so the town itself is like full of kind of, Olympic history and lots of sort of stories and things related to the Olympics all over the place in the town there. It's not a very big town. I think the town's population is 2,400. So this race coming to town like quadruples the population for the weekend. There were 2,600 athletes that raced. Anyway, it's a cool race. It was an Ironman Pro series, so it had a little more like pomp and circumstance even than a normal Ironman has. They did like full pyrotechnics at the finish line for the pro men and women when they were finishing. It wasn't quite the scale of a world championship, but like pretty close. Like they really did it up in terms of how they did that. So all of that was very cool. From like a personal, emotional side in terms of the trip, I would say it was pretty heavy, kind of uncomfortable to be there, even though it was really cool, only from the standpoint of Aaron really worked hard to be ready for the race and then couldn't do it. And then we were there and just sort of like moving through a lot of emotions of like the course would have really suited him. It's like that's his style of racing. That course is brutal, by the way. Like I understand now, having been there, like why they say that's the hardest Ironman in North America. It could just be because the run is so incredibly brutal, but he had done so much work to be ready for that run. to be ready for that bike. And so to not be able to do it, right? So it was a long day of like sort of sitting in it was a long weekend of sort of sitting in the emotions of, I wish I could do this and I can't do it. He, I think he took that super well though, but to the point of today's topic. I mean, I have another story about the trip, but maybe we want to save that for a little later. I do think that's an example of like even like just allowing it to be sad and not trying to make it be something else, even though of course we wanted to celebrate our friends who both had great days and did awesome on that course. So
Last week, we talked a lot about not pretending, things like that. So yeah, it's just life, right? There's things, unexpected things that happen, and we got to adjust. And you know, the journey's never linear. You know, we never really know what's going to happen, and planning's great, but you got to be able to adjust to these things. And part of that is kind of the lost potential. So there's working towards an experience and not actually getting the experience. You know, that is heartbreaking. There's no easy way to put that. But yeah, we just want to acknowledge that, because if we don't go those depths and really just feel that and just kind of accept that, you know, that could just, it's that suppressed pain that drives us to do things, which gets us off track. So if I'm not feeling the grief of that experience, it could just be, okay, I'm gonna develop this chip on my shoulder, and then I'm gonna work 10 times harder, but then I might not even, that might not be what I'm supposed to be doing, right? It can form these motivations that pull us off track, where we try to overcompensate for the loss rather than going through the loss and then just kind of seeing what's present for us afterwards. The big emotions, you know, they are uncomfortable, but it's this acceptance of the full range. Any part of myself I'm denying, that's going to be expressing itself some other way. And these repressed emotions are powerful, and it does really kind of eat away at our joy. We just want to get to that place where it's just like I'm feeling it. So why not just feel it? Why not just remove the judgment behind it? You know, there truly are no wrong feelings. So we connect to our heart, we connect to our soul through the feeling sensation. That's a big part of this work. You know, there's a reason we put so much emphasis on it, is that's the connection to ourselves. And you know, if I'm overriding that, if I'm pushing through a lot of things, if I'm, you know, just putting on the happy face even though I'm not happy, and there's a time and place for those things, but it's like it's always creating that space to really go through these things and understand them, so we're not carrying them with us and bringing them into other things. And so it's just whatever you're experiencing, you want to go through it so you can put it down and process it. And in that process, you you gain insights. You start to see deeper levels to things. You gain more of this self-awareness rather than more disconnection. So, and the idea that there are no wrong feelings is an important one. It's that constant feedback loop that's going on. And you know, those feelings, they might be pulling us into the past. They might be, I might experience something present day, but it feels just like childhood. It feels just like some sort of other painful experience. And so it's a bit of a time warp. You know, we talk a lot about that. But, you know, so whatever is currently happening to you, that's a window into yourself. So my mind is just a record of the past, and I store that past information through emotions, and if they're unresolved, they're stuck in my body. And so if we want to unlock them, we have to feel them. We have to go through them. We can't go around them. When I go around them, that might be a temporary coping mechanism or strategy not to feel the pain, but that's going to lead to long-term consequences. So short-term discomfort for long-term success. We're always making that trade-off here. If you're feeling it, you know, there's going to be some truth there for you. There's going to be some pieces so that you can actually learn from things. We don't really learn if we're not going through our emotions. We might be able to strategize and intellectualize things, but the big focus of this work is embodiment. So that means that I learn my lessons and I learn to show up differently, because I'm no longer segmenting and blocking off these parts of myself where I'm having to overthink and strategize everything in my life. I'm trying to act from this more natural flow where I don't have to think much about what I'm doing. I just feel pulled towards what's right for me. So when we don't own our feelings, when we deny them, that's how we get off track. I didn't explore it. I didn't see what was there for me. And so I'm trying to work around it. And in that workaround, I'm taking myself off track. And then the longer I suppress things and block them off and all that, I start to numb out. I start to be out of tune with what I'm feeling. And then I'm just confronted with this like mixture of so many things that I'm not sure what's what. Right. So through self-awareness, we get to understand that, there are complexities to these things, and I might not be ready for all the feelings or all the pieces to the puzzle, but I'm going to take it one step at a time. And the way I coach is it's being very present with you. And so that means that whatever is currently showing up for you, those are the lessons you need to learn. Okay. So if I keep seeing a pattern play out over and over again, if I keep encountering the same problem, and I keep having the same reaction to it, that's trying to show me something about myself that's unresolved. If I actually go through and feel those things and just really own what's going on there, that's where I have the power to transform and change things. And so it is just about bringing these things into ourselves so that we can experience them. And a lot of times it's a re-experiencing. It's something that happened a long time ago, but I'm experiencing a different version of it now, but it's the same theme or idea that's being brought to the surface for me to examine and look at and learn from this more mature perspective. So a lot of these things that we push away, the decisions we made was based on a lower level of consciousness. So usually that of a child that didn't really understand the world. Okay. So when we do this work and we start to turn back and look at those things, we're bringing this wisdom of being an adult now and having these broader perspectives, and we can start to apply those ideas to the past. And that's what allows us to move through and soften emotions is I shift out of the all or none thinking. I shift out of kind of the black and white stuff, and I start to see the nuance, and I start to see where I'm actually stuck. Okay. So where I'm stuck, there's actually part of me that's like frozen in time that has these big reactions to things. And that's coming from a immature version of me that didn't have the resources to move through a situation and was left behind. And so part of integrating and embodying things is retrieving those aspects of ourselves, maturing the emotions around them, and then bringing them back into ourselves where we can start to feel some more wholeness around it.
There was something you said kind of right at the beginning about the emotions getting hammered into your nervous system by not feeling them. Can you like talk a little bit more about exactly what you mean there when they're getting stuck or when they're getting, you know, imprinted that way into your nervous system?
Yeah, so my mind's job is to make judgments. It's to tell a story about what's happening to me, what I'm experiencing. And so an unresolved issue means I'm only seeing the negative aspect of something. And we've we talk about it time and time again. It's completing the circle. It's the negative and the positive together collapses the experience, and that's what creates wisdom is I understand both sides of the equation. And so a lot of times, so if something was painful for me and I didn't have the resources at that time in my life to really process and move through things, I can tuck it away into my nervous system. I store it in my body and I hold it for later. So this is through the fight or flight response. So we have this ability to push through things, much like a soldier in battle. Like you can't sit on the battlefield and process your emotions. You have to keep pushing forward, and that's survival based, right? So for me to survive, like I can't, well, one, I probably don't even have the tools to really process this, but two, it's just this me being able to push forward and move through. That's what's keeping me alive right now. And not every situation's to that extreme, but our mind thinks it is. Our mind, the lower levels of the mind, it's very survival based and it's emotional based. And we're always trying to bring it to a higher level, which is that objective thinking of our conscious mind. And so those are the things we react from. So if something was painful for me, I didn't process it. I'm feeling the discomfort of those emotions in the moment during the stressful event. But a lot of times we're not taught how to process that. We just leave it in this place of it's uncomfortable. And the longer it sits there, the more we just get used to it. But then my mind's telling a story about why I'm uncomfortable, why I feel this pain, why I feel this stress. The more I think those thoughts, now I'm creating a thought pattern. I'm telling a story about what I'm feeling, and I have my own unique perspective I'm putting on that. That goes back to that idea that two people could look at the same thing and they're going to tell vastly different stories. There's not agreement because it's all based on how you're processing information and what you believe about life. So the longer I think about something, and especially if I'm feeling the negative emotion, I'm telling myself I need to protect myself from this and it's not safe. And so our mind prioritizes that. It prioritizes safety, it prioritizes our survival. And so if I have that negative emotion and I'm telling myself the story about it, the justifications, the excuses, whatever it is to kind of tell my version, I'm starting to, the more I let those thoughts cycle, I'm starting to build that into a concrete, solid idea within me called a belief. So I form beliefs based on the pain, and I start building walls around the tension in my body to keep me protected and safe from something. And so I develop coping mechanisms or strategies to stay safe that go around the pain. Because that's the thing is, if I don't go through the pain, I'm just going to judge it as good or bad. And if it's a negative emotion, I'm going to judge it as bad. And then I'm going to have very generalized thinking about what that is. So if I don't do this, then I'll be safe. If I stay away from this type of person, then I'll be safe. We start to generalize our thinking and we form these kind of blanket safety beliefs around things. And those are referred to as limiting beliefs. So I start to build these walls within myself, but that doesn't go anywhere. Our body's keeping score. It's keeping a record of what we believe about life, and it's storing that into our nervous system. So when I say hammer it down, that means I keep thinking the same thing over and over again about it. And so I'm building it into a belief. Once it's a belief, I don't question it anymore. I just accept it as my truth. Beliefs are rules of life. It's what I absolutely believe, and I stop questioning. This is the way it is. But that's like from my perspective, that's colored by pain. And those are the things that hold us back in life. It's how I'm seeing a situation. I'm seeing it in a way that I need to protect myself from something, and I'm blocking this aspect of my life off so that I don't have to deal with that anymore because I never learned about how to deal with it. So that's all waiting for you anytime you're ready for it. So we can store this stuff for many, many years, sometimes a lifetime. If we do zero reflection work, generally we hold on to our beliefs are pretty consistent, and over time they gather more and more energy and momentum in the negative direction. And so then you get somebody that's really rigid, closed off, judgmental, bitter, resentful, things like that, because they haven't learned their lessons. They've just left things in a negative place and then they've built their life around those lies. When we own what we feel, we're giving ourselves permission to unwind that. We're giving ourselves permission to open that up and just see like what's actually really there. And a lot of times that's scary. A lot of times this was stuff that happened very young. We might not even fully be consciously aware of what happened to us. The mind's very good at hiding things and tucking it away and repressing it so that we don't have access to it. And so from that place, it's driving and motivating us to all sorts of decisions in life that we're not even conscious of. So I can't build a conscious life. I can't be intentional about my life if I'm in reaction and I'm just trying to avoid the pain. Okay. I just keep recreating the same situations over and over again, which are actually designed to show me what I'm still holding on to. They're designed to show me my pain so that I can heal it. Now that I'm out of that survival mode, I might still be in survival mode. It kind of just depends on your situation. But it's this ability to update your mind and say, like, hey, I'm actually not in the same situation as I was when I was a kid or when I went through this heartbreak or whatever it is. The thing that was really hard for me to process that I didn't have the tools and resources to move through, I save that for later until I'm ready for it. When I'm ready for it, it's about re-experiencing the emotions. It's about allowing them to come up and stripping out the judgment and the decisions you made previously in your life and updating your mind about them. Based on what I know now, this is how I see this. This owning what we feel is this, it's kind of taking the layers off of the walls we've built within ourselves, allowing some of it to pop through. And some of it's pretty intense. If it's shame based, if it's anger based, if it's fear based, there might be some kind of twisted stuff up in there. It can be intense, but we have to acknowledge what we feel and we have to accept what we feel in order to transform it to something better. So if I leave it in the fear or the anger, the bitterness, the resentment, that's going to define my life. I have to, if I want peace, if I want joy, if I want happiness, it is about going back, unlocking these things and processing them so you're no longer walling off these aspects of yourself, like, and storing them in your body. Okay. So we hammer them into our nervous system that way. And so when we're in a safe place, when we've created a different life where it's not just trying to get through the day, that's where it's safer to start to open these things up and try and understand what's going on within me. That's where we turn back and we go inward and we reflect to try and find a new relationship with the ideas of the things that have happened to me. If along with these beliefs that I've built, I start to bring that into my identity. So I start to believe that the things that have happened to me are who I am. And that's where we get really off track is I'm pinning my identity to the worst things that have happened to me. Those can become these big victim stories and all the things. It's a slippery slope, and so I need to unwind the beliefs. And in that place, my identity starts to shift. I start to see it as something that happened to me, not who I am. Okay. So we start reversing the cycle. And as we're doing that and moving through these emotions, that's what gives us the brighter future now. I no longer feel anchored and stuck in the past. I can kind of see that things can head in a better direction now that I have these new awarenesses. I can start to open it up, shift it, change it, transform it however I'd like. It's all fully moldable, but it's a conscious process. I have to choose to let things go. I have to choose to forgive. I have to choose to want peace in my life. I have to surrender the ego, which the ego needs to be right. And it's always trying to protect our identity. And so if my identity is pretty warped and it's built on my pain, now I'm trying to protect the thing that's destroying me. Okay. I'm trying to protect the thing that's making me miserable. That's just a losing battle. So we try to work through these emotions and get to the bottom of it so that you can understand and fully process them and let them go so that it's no longer influencing all your decisions moving forward. And in that process, I'm gaining wisdom and insights into myself. And in that place, also, as I'm moving through the levels of the mind and getting out of survival and the emotional level, I'm starting to have more conscious control about how to intentionally build my life in a way that sets me up for success, whatever that looks like for you. It's this process of unwinding. We hold on to things until we learn about them. And when I'm ready to learn about it, it starts to unwind. And it's generally through my life experiences that I'm being delivered are going to be showing me how to unwind it. I just need to pay attention. I need to be aware of myself in my relationship to things. Okay, why does this make me feel this way? Why does this plug me into this thought process? And we start to question it. And as we question it, we start to soften it. And now that belief starts to wear down where it's no longer solid and it starts to, the energy starts to move again, where I can see these new possibilities rather than it being a fixed thing in my life. I'm internalizing, hammering into my nervous system, and then the healing is reversing that process. And it's me seeing it through this broader lens where these things weren't really personal to me. They're just things that have happened to me. As I do that process, I start to see a bigger picture to things. I start to see why things happen to me. I start to make the connections of my role in it. That is that taking accountability piece of our mind always just wants to blame other things or circumstances. And I don't have control over that stuff, but I do have control over me. And so we always just bring it back inward. How can I take full responsibility for the things that have happened to me so that I can actually heal them and move through them rather than leaving them in this unresolved place?
Let's jump back to the full permission to own what you feel and talk a little bit more about the things that keep us from those feelings, aside from what you described around you store it for later because it's a safety mechanism or a survival mechanism. Let's talk about other things. And then maybe this is the opportunity to share the additional story from Lake Placid, but go ahead.
So what happens is, as I come out of those environments and I am in a better place, like I do start to kind of formulate this idea of like who I am and what my value systems are. And part of that is generally like, I'm a good person. Everybody tells themselves that. But that's just because we've like blocked out like our darkness. It's just like there's these things inside me that I keep at bay, and I don't allow myself to go there because that might start to question who I believe I am now. So I might have worked very hard to get to this place, but I might be still caught in overthinking. I might be in this place of having a hard time moving forward. I might have really challenging relationships. I might not feel good enough. And so that's all like playing in the background, even though I'm trying to lead this life. Positive thinking is a trap, because it's overriding all that stuff. Pushing things away, disregarding your feelings is a trap because I'm not actually pulling from the things that I have inside me, which are going to sabotage me. That wisdom of your feelings don't matter and just push through with discipline, that gets you so far until you burn out. It's, none of us like want to feel that way. None of us want to be there, but the reality is it's there. And so I can pretend it's not there, or I can accept that it's there, and I can own that it's there. And so I'm opening it up and bringing it into my control, which is like now I'm a fully functioning adult and I have resources and I have this ability to see these situations differently. And so in that process, I'm going to be feeling uncomfortable things. But, the judgment of a 5-year-old that's locked in my system, it might not make very much sense. There might be some huge disconnects going on in my life because that 5-year-old version's kind of steering the ship. It's seeing the disconnects in your life. It's seeing like, if I'm trying to move towards this thing, but something in me won't let me go there, that's because like I've denied my feelings. My feelings are the feedback. It's trying to keep me safe. I've made a lot of decisions about what that looks like. And that might have gotten me to this point, but that's whatever gets us to one point is always what holds us back at the next level, right? Those strategies stop working, and that's what stagnates us and makes us stuck is I have to evolve my thinking. And a big part of that is I need to upgrade my thought process. That means going back to the immature parts of myself and healing them and offering the support that I didn't have during the moment of stress or the tough time. I need to open those things up and yeah, you might have some bizarre thoughts. You might like have a real intensity behind it. It's this ability, but that's what you were feeling when all this stuff happened to begin with. So you've already lived through it. You've already experienced it. It's just when it comes back through, you have to re-experience it because it's on its way out now. Okay. So I'm unwinding it, but all those feelings are going to surface and those thoughts attached to them are also going to surface. And it might be stuff that we don't think is us. It might be like, I've never thought this way, but well, can you speak for the younger version of yourself that didn't really know what was going on? Or the people around you during that time? There might have been distortions, perversions, things like that around you. There might have been people not functioning from a very healthy place, and you're like absorbing that information, you're absorbing their behaviors. And so some of that's locked in you of like, yeah, like I'm like carrying some of these things from my ancestors, right? It's all the stuff's like written into our DNA as well. We don't have to go that deep, but I'm carrying a lot with me, a lot of burdens, and not all of it's mine. It could be some family stuff, most likely is. It's confronting it and moving through it. If I'm having wild thoughts, if I'm having really intense emotions, it's that, okay, well, in order for me to be experiencing any of that, it literally has to be within me. Okay. So it has to come from somewhere. And so it's just allowing it to surface and not judging it. Right. So not like, oh, I can't feel that way or I can't think that way. It's like, no, like I am feeling that way and I am thinking that way. It's worth kind of exploring. So where did this come from? Like, why am I feeling this way? Allowing to us, allowing ourselves to open it up long enough to get some information about what's going on. Right. And it's the inability to feel these things and wanting to avoid them. Like, once again, they're tucked away, they're still inside you. And now they're just going to be creating more self-monitoring. Like they're going to create more overthinking of like, okay, like I don't feel like I can be myself because I'm trying to be something I'm not. We want to accept all of us, everything inside of us. We want to accept it. That doesn't mean we're going to act on it. If I have some intense thoughts, if I do have the hatred or any of that stuff going on, it doesn't mean I go do something about it. It just means I feel it. And then as I go through it, I start to decide like, yeah, I don't want to live this way. I don't want to carry this in my heart. So you eventually start to move through it and let it go, but we need to actually experience it to understand it, to see where it came from. And then that's where we can make some new adjustments and move forward in a better way.
All right. Well, I think your explanation of that might be a good transition for like a real life example of things coming up and like what's tied to it or whatever as you're going through the emotion. I don't know. You can explain it after I tell the story, I guess. So while we were in Lake Placid, I have a race on the calendar still. And so I still need to be training even though we're there for the race. So we drove out there. So we took my bike. Plan was that I was supposed to do a 55-mile bike ride while we were in Lake Placid, in addition to long run, a few other workouts. And there's a couple things that were just the lead up to this race. Obviously, I explained we made a last minute decision to go. There's a lot of things, just like life wise, when you take trips like that, especially road trips where you're investing full days in driving. Anyway, it's been like really, really hot in the Midwest for the last few weeks, like really, really hot. We, and when we were in Boulder, it was hot. In my mind, we were going someplace that was going to be hot. We get to Lake Placid, it's significantly cooler up there than what I was expecting. So the day I'm supposed to do this bike ride, we wake up in the morning, we're going to start early because we want to be done. There were two other people riding with me, and it's 49 degrees and raining. And we look at the weather and we decide, well, we think it's better to go now than to wait till later because the rain is supposed to get worse. So hopefully we can do this ride and it won't be too bad. Like by the time we're getting ready to finish, like hopefully we will have missed like the bulk of it because in the afternoon it did pour in the afternoon, but for this ride anyway, doesn't matter. So we start out knowing we have to do 55 miles. The original route that we picked was not quite that long, so we were going to do this little out and back from our Airbnb to add on to help us get to the total of 55. That was the goal. So we head out, and I'm immediately so cold, just like so cold. And because we didn't plan to ride in 49 degrees and rain, I don't have gloves. I don't have like extra layers, all the things that I would normally have planned for had I been like, oh, it's going to be cold when you start out on this ride. My bad for not like paying attention to the weather in Lake Placid before we went there. Like, it's my fault in terms of that part. But anyway, we start out and like we get on this road and it's very rolling, like steep, punchy climbs, pretty technical. So, like, climbing, like a lot of up and down curves. It's very, lots of trees. So, like, protected from the rain a little bit, but then also, like, you can't see anything because it's just of the technical nature of this particular road. Thankfully, very quiet. Like, in the first half mile or whatever, there's like this giant climb. We're climbing and I'm like, I am not warmed up to climb like this. Like, this feels terrible. We ride out, it was a dead end road. We ride out to the end of the road. It has rained on us the whole time. And everywhere where there's like these steep climbs, there's an equal descent. It wasn't like this is like, so every time we go down, then it's like so cold and I'm very nervous descending, just thinking like, oh my gosh, what if like something like a deer jumps out or a car comes around that curve and I can't see it. And now I'm descending and I'm going, 30, 35 miles an hour down this hill. And like, just like all of those things like start coming up. We do the turn at the end and I say to the two people I'm riding with, I'm like, not sure I'm about this. This does not feel good to me. And I'm not sure I'm about this. But I like at this point, I got to turn around and at least get back to where we started. And so we turn around and as we're going back, I just like kept feeling this like more and more nervous, like, And it's also tied to like more and more cold. Like I was just getting like colder and more nervous. And there's like going back, there was a descent into a curve, and we're descending, and there's a deer. I can see her on the side of the road. And like I start braking because I'm like, I don't know what she's going to do. Is she going to jump in front of me? Is she going to go further into the woods? I don't know. So I start braking. The two people I'm riding with like blow by me and just like keep going. And then I get like very like more freaked out. Like, did they not see her? Now it's rain, all the things, right? And I just like over the course of 3 miles, like I make myself a basket case, basically. They stop at the end, like where we would have turned to go back to the Airbnb, and they're like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I essentially have like a full like breakdown on the side of the road of like, I'm so cold, I'm so scared. I don't know if I'm ever gonna like be over that. This all goes back to like the car accident, which we talked about multiple episodes ago, but like I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to ride like these again. Like if you like I would be so happy like put me on a flat road where I can like put my head down and just like push high watts for intervals and like no problem. But these like descents with the curves and all it like it would just like felt like overwhelmingly too much. So I we decide that they're going to go on and that I'm going to go back. I call Aaron to come and get me, even though it's like not super far from the Airbnb, but it was like very steep. Like, I was like, whatever, like I could walk back, I guess. It was like super steep back up to the Airbnb. So I'm like walking partway up the hill, waiting for him to come down to pick me up with my bike. And I just am like very much like, normally for me, when something starts to be kind of scary, I can like talk myself out of it. I can be like, this is fine. Like, you don't need to be worried about this. Like, this is all in your head. And then I could not do that. You then couple this with the fact that, like, I rode Unbound, which we talked about however many episodes ago, and did fine. In all of that craziness of that race, was fine, and like couldn't make it through this like 6.5 miles or whatever I ended up doing that day. And then there's also like elements of like, I lead this triathlon team and like, what business do I have doing this if like I can't even finish a freaking workout and whatever, whatever. So,
Yeah, so it's in a sequence of events, right? And so it kept building. And I say your tolerance for that is lower. Not you were in a car accident, your husband just got in a bike accident, that shakes you up. It's and our minds linking these ideas together. Okay, I'm on the road, you were in a car accident. But you just saw everything that just happened to Aaron. And so now there's all these like worries and anxieties because all this stuff's pretty fresh. We just at different times we have different capacity. And so I always, there's a difference between like race mode and in practice mode, right? It's race mode is like, okay, yeah, my job is just to try and it's more the fight or flight. Like I'm in battle. Like I do have to keep pushing forward if I want to achieve a good result. But when it's not that intensity, it is more of being more conscious of like, okay, what am I feeling here? Things just kept accumulating and stacking up until your system kind of shut down, right? It's just acknowledging each thing and exploring it in the moment. And so that's what I recommend with clients is like, hey, yeah, like if these things come up, it serves you to really just pay attention and try and create safety within your body before you move to the next step. If the context allows for it, because if I'm just pushing through and then I get more and more warning signs coming up, now everything just keeps amplifying on me. And that's where I hit the state of overwhelm. And once I hit the overwhelm, now it's like I'm emotionally flooded and I don't have any resources to move forward. Right. So we try to get things when they're small, and you're the elements, is like all these unexpected things. So when I'm dealing with unexpected circumstances, I do have to be hyper aware, hyper alert, all those things. It is very costly from an energy perspective. And so it's, I if there's more variables and more factors, I generally lower expectations. Like I don't want to put extra pressure on things. I don't want to attach my identity to it, like I lead the team, any of that stuff. That's not helpful because that's where if we override too much, we could put ourselves in danger. So it's just allowing, okay, yeah, there was a sequence of events. Each one kept amplifying what I was already feeling. And and that's saying, so if my mind's fixated on what can go wrong, and I don't shift my focus off of that, it's going to keep gathering and building energy in that direction. And you have good reason to feel why you feel. There's been a couple big events here that are difficult to process, and it does really bump up against this idea of safety. And so the alarm bells are louder right now. They're not always going to be that way, but it's also just this acknowledging where I'm at. Like, hey, I've been dealing with a lot. My capacity is not what I'm used to because I've been hit with a couple unexpected things that have really like shaken things up for me in a big way. You're a little bit more raw emotionally. You're in this place where you're feeling a lot more. And so when you feel a lot more, it's much more difficult to shut it down. I can try, but we've been at this quite a while where, you do your sensitivity is increasing, which is a highly valuable thing in terms of being able to read people and work through dynamics, but it is also like you become more in tune with the present moment of like, this is what I'm feeling right now. I can't just push past it. I have to go through and create the safety before I take my next step. And it's being okay with the slower process. It's being okay with, I'm not trying to prove anything out here because I have all these things on my plate and they're calling my attention right now. And so if I try to stuff them aside or push them away, there are just some circumstances where, our body knows best, and it is gonna, if we're not listening, it's gonna keep dialing it up until we do. Right. And, I have a client that's about to race Norseman. It's in like Norway, jumping into cold water, there's like snow on the mountain, all these things. And yeah, the conversation was, how do I distinguish between like, okay, this is actually dangerous to me, or this is just my doubts creeping up. And so we get to that by, taking the ego out of it, removing expectations. And, we just set the goal, like, it would be good for her to finish the race. She doesn't care what that looks like. And so in that place, you have the space to kind of work out because, it is potentially you're swimming in really cold water. There's all these elements she's going to be dealing with. And it's like not, you don't really want to mess around with nature on that level, because that could have severe consequences. So it's just you bring those awarenesses in of like, okay, if I'm emotionally flooded right now, I'm not actually in tune with the present. Okay. So that becomes my priority, is owning what I feel so that I can get back to center. And from that center place, now I'm going to be more in tune with whether I'm in danger or not, whether it's not safe for me to keep pushing forward. And so we try to get things when they're small, because if we don't, then they just keep building, and the more momentum it gathers, the harder it is to stop it. Right. And then we do hit the short circuit, overwhelm, panic attack button. And that's your system trying to protect you. But if we address every little thing that comes up, and try to come back to peace with it, being like, hey, it's not the same situation. We try to reconcile it in our mind. It's just hyper attuned to danger signals right now based on what's happened to you. Right. So it's just kind of seeing it. It's going to take a while for me to get my bearings back to center where those alarm bells aren't so heightened. But it's because they are heightened, it's like it creates that extra emphasis that, okay, this is here. I might as well just work through it and deal with it. rather than try to push forward, because if I don't, it's just going to keep building. There's a time and place. Like, given the context, okay, it's probably more important for me to just go through this right now. And part of that is surrendering my ego. I don't need to look a certain way to anybody. I've got some stuff going on here and I want to sort that out. And, you see it all the time, in these Ironman races, a lot of the pros, there's a lot of pressure on them. And, like a bike problem, or they do, or, maybe they get kicked in the water or whatever, and you go into fight or flight. There are just things that can dial you up so much that it's just like, okay, the momentum's so great that my body's shutting down on me because it's trying to keep me safe. But that's usually an accumulation of things that lowers our barrier where I can't really hold these things at bay anymore. So it's the nature of it. It's, riding a bike on a road like that in the elements, you do need to be very present. You need to be very aware and connected. And the people that flew past you, they're not carrying some the similar things that you have right at the moment. They haven't gone through that, and so they're not as like connected to the dangers of what can be happening, right? And then so in your awareness, you had that, but it's like also based on the danger signals you're getting. It's like your mind has no option but to scan your environment and look for what could go wrong, right? And so there's, trust is probably a little bit lower right now, but that's the thing, is you're getting this feedback and these emotions are surfacing. And so, we're just going to continue to work through those and try to get to a place of peace with these things. And, it can all be solved. Sometimes it's just a bit of a process, and it's adjusting that, yeah, maybe now is not the time to be bold and push through the Unbound race. You really did build yourself up for that. Even after the car accident, it was like, I understand what this entails. Like, I understand what I'm signing up for. With this scenario, there was some unknowns that popped in that you weren't quite expecting. And so that creates extra alertness. So it's just, context is so important with these things, but it's just like, this is what's being delivered to me today. There's something for me to learn about this. I can only get to the next step if I feel and process this thing. Then I might get my head back on my shoulders where I'm more in tune and less emotionally activated. But if I'm emotionally activated, it does just, that's what's going to call my attention anyway. Especially, because we've been doing this work so long, your sensitivity is increasing. And so where you may have like pushed through before, there's less of that ability, but you are just so much, you're in tune with so much more information right now, which is a cool benefit. But they're like trade-offs. Once I learn to be super aware, it's kind of hard to go back to like not paying attention to things. Right. So it's this balance. But so the longer you're on this path of awareness and you're addressing things moment to moment, it's like every day I process my emotions. I don't like really bring things into the next day. And I've created the space in my life to do that. But it's like, I just stay very present with everything. And that creates a lot of trust, because there's nothing like hiding in the background. Okay. There's nothing I feel like is going to come out and get me, because I'm like facing it. Right. And so the more I face, the more I work through it, the more I can actually just be present and trust that I can handle whatever comes my way. And I trust my intuition and my body to adapt moment to moment. And I become less attached to any sort of plan or things needing to be a certain way for me to feel okay. I just kind of trust that I just have to be present, and I'll know what I need to do every step of the way. It goes back to a lot of those law of attraction ideas of what you resist persists type of thing, where whatever I'm pushing against is actually growing in magnitude. We just want to be accepting of all that life brings. I don't need to, and I think, if I get super latched onto like, I need to be positive, well, now I'm like denying anything that's negative, right? And that gets me out of tune with reality. And we just want to be in sync with reality. We want moment to moment feedback that we can operate from. And the way we get there is allowing ourselves to move through emotions as they come up. And it might not always be the proper context to do that, but we want to take a note of it and address it when we do have that space, so that we're not accumulating these things and they're not stacking up on us, because the more they stack up on us, the lower our capacity is to handle things in life. So our resilience lowers. Okay. So you grow your resilience by actually moving through emotions and resolving them. And that means I need to own them, bring them into myself, and try to understand what they are. When I start to understand them at a deeper level, they start to soften and dissipate. And then I start to integrate that information into myself. It is the path to accelerated growth, is to feel whatever you're feeling and start to surrender the judgments of that you've decided a long time ago. We want to update the mind to be in sync with who you are now, not who you were. Part of that is allowing me to feel the emotions of the past and then decide something new about them based on this new vantage point. So when you own them, you can transform them. But if I'm denying them, they're just going to grow in the background. And then I'm going to have anxiety that they're going to come back to haunt me one day. So once again, the short term stuff always leads to long term problems. So we want to choose the discomfort in the short term, and that sets us up for success long term.
Well, let's talk about the best places for people to find you and any other updates you've got that you want to share.
If you're curious about this work, want help understanding your feelings at a deeper level so that you can move through them and let them go, you can schedule a free 30-minute strategy session with me. You can book that on my website, brandonthielk.com. Also, if you want to register for my newsletter, The Lightning Report, that goes out each Monday with some insights and reflections for the week, summary of the podcast, and any updates about anything I got going on in the business. If you want to follow along on YouTube and Instagram at Brandon Thielk, we post out there regularly. Also on TikTok at bthielk. And please like, subscribe, follow, comments, anything. Would love to hear from you guys and how I can support you in a better way. And if you have some specific situations you need some help with and you don't mind sharing that, we can bring that to the group, and it can help everybody. So I look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah. The links for everything will be in the show notes on both YouTube and the podcast. So yeah, any of those things, if you want to look them up, you can easily find all that there. Right, talk to you later, Brandon.
See you next time.